The 2003 TMNT show is arguably the darkest version of TMNT, with dark stories, a dark tone, and overall dark colours. So it's safe to say that this is the darkest version of TMNT show to date. Why would the show have been so much darker than the other versions? We do have to look at what are the darkest episodes of the show. However, this list was hard to make, not because there was a handful of episodes that are dark, but it came down to what made the episodes dark. I mean, I could put the first half of season 4 on, just due to Leonardo being so, well, angry, I guess. But no, I went beyond that and found the darkest episodes of the show. And before we do get started, if you do like this content and want to see more from this channel, please do make sure to subscribe, like, and turn on post notifications. Now let's get on with the video. At number 10, the had to be Total Extinction. While this episode might not be dark with the comparative looks, it does however have a much darker storyline. So Darius Darn is Cody's only real family still alive, but is using Cody's name and power to benefit him. But when his plan is discovered, he uses Cody Telex armor to destroy the city and even to kill Cody as well. At the end, Sterling is the only one who can save him while giving up his life. This is pretty messed up, as no adult should ever take advantage of a kid, and especially not try to kill them. At number 9, had to be Bad Day. This episode is one of those episodes that keep saying, "Oh my god, revenue is a surprise." In this episode, the Turtles and Splinter are meditating when they are flushed out of their home as Clunk drowned. If killing animals is not bad enough, the Turtles then go on the run from Bishop, and that's when Casey and April get blown up. Then, to make things worse, Cheryl returns and badly beats up the Turtles. After this, Splinter finds and discovers that the Mystics were behind and stop them. So this is a messed up episode with the Turtles seeing their friends get killed, but this episode could have been a lot darker if only the Turtles didn't get over this within a matter of seconds from them waking up. At number 8, you had to be Dragon's Brew. Now, this episode is one of those episodes that just makes you love to hate Bishop. For most of the episode, it's not too dark until you see the monster. Now, he's not exactly scary, but he is shot in 2 pieces, which, how the hell did I get away with this? The monster then pieces himself back together and gets himself blown up by Bishop. And if it's still not dark enough, yet we get to see a flashback to when he was a normal human. At his wedding, Bishop was his best man. We'll now get to see what actually happened after this. It's safe to say that it's pretty dark and messed up. If this episode was to show what actually happened to him, then this episode would be a whole lot darker and be way up high on the list. At number 7, it had to be The Notes from the Underground. In these episodes, we find out that Shredder has been taking people off the streets, only to be experimenting them into monsters to find the Utron. But then the monsters rose up and was freed, but sadly could not go back to their normal lives. When Turtles came, they all had to go down to the Death City, where monsters and Turtles were taken one by one. The person who kidnapped them all wanted them to live, and to never leave the city, so the Turtles stopped him and put him on ice, and then freed the others. However, the people who were once monsters was not able to leave, or otherwise were returned to being monsters. This episode is extremely dark as a man doesn't want to be alone, and to be honest, I can't really say that if I was in his position, I wouldn't do the same thing. But at the same time, with the monsters, they're not being able to go outside. I would normally say that, this is one of those situations where it's not relatable, but with what's going on in the world, I think it's a very relatable situation. And number 6, had to be the beginning of the end. Now, this episode is just full of action that leads to one death after another. Chicho is beaten to death by the Mystics, so an angel tribunal blown up, and then a building collapses on top of them, without them making it out alive. Adam is crushed to death by a rock, Tora is stabbed, Joy is either suffocated or her back is broken. Either way, she dies. Faraji just run across the room. While you could say this episode is not as dark as some of the other episodes on this list, but with death count this high, which also leads to a resurrection, and also the end, I think it's safe to say that this episode is just dark, just depending on what you consider dark. And number 5, it had to be Enter the Dragon. In this episode, everyone must come together to stop the Shredder. But the Shredder has transformed New York into a genomic hell, where monster zombies are on the surface. But if you're thinking that's all that makes the episode dark, then you are mistaken. This episode has a high death count, I think possibly even the highest. The Shredder kills the Turtles, the Acolytes, and then after that he even takes out the Ancient One. And then later in the episode, Tamata Yoshi comes back to life, only to then kill the Shredder and cut him in half. With Yoshi's final moment at the live, he says goodbye to Splinter in a natural sad way, one that even Splinter cried at. And with that, Splinter's finally got a piece up with Master Death, and if you can't really say that's dark and what happened with genomic hell stuff, demons, dragons, zombies, death, then I don't really know what else to say other than it's dark. And therefore, it had to be same as never was. In a world that Shredder is ruling Earth and has killed everyone, or has done horrific damage to people, it's no wonder why this episode is a fan favourite and one of the darkest. In this episode, Don is being teleported to a future that finds out that he left the team, and all these bad things has happened. Spencer and Casey are both dead, Anna's in a wheelchair with backstorm attached to his shoulder, Michael lost his left arm, Raph is blind in one eye, and Liam might be blind, and so much more that we never get to see, but we know it's still dark. At the end of the episode, we see Yatel's attack Shredder, but at a high price. Yatel's, Cry, Han, Baxter, and even Shredder all brutally die in I don't know what to say, horrific ways to die in some cases. And at the end of the episode, Donnie's just regretting all of it, because, yeah, how can you not? And it just doesn't make it think, like, if you're still thinking this episode is not dark enough, this episode was actually banned from TV after this episode was released, and for possibly good reasons. So it's not surprising when people do say that this episode is dark, and is a fan favourite. And number 3 had to be Darkness Within. In this episode, it tells Venture to find Angel's brother, but encounter zombies, but are easily taken care of, but then they run into Monster, which is where things get extremely dark. Mattel start to see their individual fears. Until one is losing his friends and family, which Andy does get to see happen in just a few episodes later. Raph's greatest fear is like his fear becomes better for him or becomes Shredder. Either way, I don't know, leads to his downfall in a few episodes. Leonardo's worst fear is failing, and you can actually see this in later episodes, specifically in like the first half of season 4, where he feels the most responsibility for failing at the mission to stop Shredder, and for good reason. And he goes into big down spot. I don't know what to say. It's just so depressing to see a tale like this and see his fear come true. Damn. Marky's worst fear is being betrayed, which still does happen in future episodes like Samus Never Was. Yeah. I mean, this episode could have been so much darker, but the only thing that lets this episode down, that doesn't make it the amazing episode that it could be, or even impactful, is just the fact that they get over their fears, and then they never mention it. I mean, they probably do it off screen, but with a show like this and what I went through, it would make more sense to talk about it, and to make it even darker. And number 2 had to be Hunted. After many months of Leatherhead being tortured and experimented on by Agent Bishop, he's finally free and living with the Turtles. But because of Bishop, Leatherhead now has PTSD for the whole situation, making him to be more angry very quickly. But one night when he's having a nightmare, he accidentally wakes up and hurt Mikey. Arthur thinks he leaves and doesn't want to hurt anyone else. But when he comes across a hunter, he begs to get killed. In this episode, I'm very surprised they were able to get away with this, due to them doing more adult things like PTSD and suicide. Have this episode got past censors? It's crazy, but I'm glad that I got this episode out. But my biggest problem with this episode is just down to the fact that they're dealing with these big, important issues that they could teach on to the younger generation to try to help them out and figure out what's the problem with it all. But no, they just leave it for 5 minutes, and then they send them off to a new home, and then just never really talk to him, or they just leave him for nearly, 10-15 episodes before they eventually find him. If a character going through that many problems, you should at least try to deal with them, or at the very least try to help them in some small way. Now here are some honorable mentions. Nightmare Recycle. Now this episode would have been one of the darkest episodes, possibly number 2. But because it was never released, I can't really say that it's number 1, number 2. But this episode would have centered around Garbage Man, Han, and going into their past about how they were joined twins. But due to this episode never being made, I can't really put it higher than that. Now, Garbage Man is a show who shows a more realistic problem we face in society with homeless people, as we never really take time out of our day to ever notice them or even care about them. So when they go missing, we don't realise, and police don't really care about them enough. So you can see why this episode is dark, but at the same time, I feel like why this episode doesn't really feel as impactful or dark enough is down to the fact that the villain, this whole garbage man, does some stupid things. I know that it has a really good moral message, and it's like one of the best ways to go around it, but they just don't really go around it the right way. Go around the wrong way with this garbage man. I mean, Mike Pollock is a nice guy, but it's just why. Another honourable mention I'd like to make is our monster. Now this episode deals with Rat King fighting with Casey and Turtles while trying to figure out who he is and where he came from. In a way, it all deals with the same issues as Haunted, but at the same time it doesn't have a great impact as the other one, and it comes off a bit, I don't know, like weak, but due to the fact that this is the only episode that deals with Rat King, it just comes off a bit weird, like, why do I care about this guy? Even though Rat King should have definitely had more episodes. Now, of course, at number 1, it has to be Insane in the Memory. If you've seen this episode, then you would understand why it's the darkest. In this episode, we see a torture Stockman finally getting a body, but due to him rushing the experiment, the body starts to fall apart, and this doesn't stop him, it just puts it all back like a Frankenstein body, to only make things worse for him, to the point where he even starts to have flashbacks and delusions about his mother, and about the time she died. But if that's still not dark enough or heartbreaking enough, this scene is actually like a recreation of what I like to put as more like in remembrance, because this whole scene was actually based off a real life event from Scott Williams, who actually played the voice of Baxter Stockman. And to hear that, it only makes the scene even more heartbreaking and just darker, man. But then, of course, we have this scene.
Stay away from me, Dr. Stockman!
You've been a very naughty girl.
Oh boy, do I really have to say much more than that to get my point across about this being the darkest episode? So yeah, after doing this video, you can see now why this show has the darkest episodes. And it's a shame really that TV shows, movies are trying to move away from this. I mean, this show tried to push the boundaries in so many ways, and it's a shame that TV will never be able to do the same thing again. But with what we did here, I'm very satisfied. I'm proud that I grew up with this version. So yeah, let me know what you thought the darkest episode was. I'm actually quite interested. I feel like a lot of people are just going to say something never was, but each should own really. But yeah, that's going to be it for today, guys. If you do this one, please share, like, subscribe, and all that stuff. Goodbye, yo, bye.